It's time for another episode of Lying Wonders Strangest Things. I'm Zach Martin with Michael H. Brown. You can always get a copy of Lying Wonders Strangest Things by going to his website, spiritdaily.com, where you'll find all kinds of links to all kinds of great stories that you will find fascinating. Michael, since the last time we spoke, I've had this uneasy feeling about what's about to happen in the United States of America and perhaps worldwide. I get the feeling, for whatever the reason, that they're trying to manufacture a collapse of the economy. And this idea of collapsing the economy just so that a president doesn't get reelected, no matter who the president is, to me is one of the most evil, diabolical ways to go about winning for your side. Now I'm more repulsed by anybody that wants to manufacture this kind of thing. And I'm more repulsed by the mainstream media for playing a hand in this, because so many people will get hurt once again in the wake of an economic collapse. Bill Maher, another example. Hope we have a recession or a depression just so he doesn't get reelected. What kind of talk is that?
Yeah, I mean, and then when you look at the technological realm, which can control a lot of financial things, it's not just Soros, it's not just, a club in Rome, or, the financial types meeting and so forth, banking types, but also the high tech. We know that Google has skewed search engines so that they aim towards the more embarrassing things about conservatives and so forth. William Gates is going to tell the whole world about vaccines and birth control and other master of the universe issues, but hasn't even fine-tuned his Microsoft software program yet. And, it goes on. It just goes on from there. It's chilling, the power that Amazon has. And as all these folks, Facebook, Twitter and so forth, have a liberal leaning. So they're controlling the information flow. And when it comes to money, look at Amazon. Look at their power. They can declare something as dangerous goods and basically just wipe you out. And here they're taking over so much of the retail sector. So, they're on the verge of controlling way too much what we can consume.
There is another disturbing thing that's happening in China right now, and probably to some extent, and you alluded to it, is happening here with this control, this social credit. Do you know what this social credit is and how it works in China and the dangers it presents us here in the United States?
Well, I'm certainly no expert on it, but, they're basically evaluating people, not just on their, financial credit score, but on a personal basis. For instance, how they act on a subway and so forth. So they're getting, and this is something that they want completed, a database within the next couple of years. They want to get to the point where they have a social score on everyone in that country. And if you don't make the cut, if they don't like your score, they will do things like prevent you from taking airplane flights. They'll even slow down your internet connection, and just all of these, your education, your access to public education, all these things they're controlling, just like Orwell, feared and prophesied back for 1984, a few decades late, but nonetheless holding true to those concerns.
What does it mean to be a liberal? We talk liberal, we talk conservative, but how would you define it?
Well, in our time, there's nothing wrong with conservative, moderate, or liberal if they adhere to moral principles. Unfortunately, in this country, very little of that is going on right now. In the United States, we've gotten to the point where you define a liberal as somebody who's in favor of Planned Parenthood, who's in favor of all kinds of personal behavior that Christians, those who practice as Christians, conservative Christians, find abhorrent. So it's gotten to that stage. I'm going to try to be objective, Zach, and say that, look, the liberals stand up for a lot of worthy causes, but it has gone to such an extreme that it's really the party of Planned Parenthood.
Also, it's almost as if Planned Parenthood is a religion. And what I mean by that is, according to the First Amendment, the United States as a government does not support any religion. We don't fund any religion. There's a separation between church and state, which gets misinterpreted all the time, meaning no God should be present anywhere in the United States of America in public places. That's really not how it was designed. When you take a non-for-profit, a 501c3 like Planned Parenthood, and you earmark $500 million a year to go towards Planned Parenthood, that is, in fact, it's supporting a religion. It's supporting a way of life, right? It's favoritism. It's not supporting money to adoption agencies, right? It's not giving to pro-life causes. It's specifically giving toward Planned Parenthood, which means abortion. And I really love how that's sanitized. Pro-choice? No, you're pro-abortion. And after, scientifically, I know doctors who are atheists, Michael, who will tell you that once the fetus is viable, this is not our belief. Our belief is life at conception. But here's a doctor who's an atheist. Once the fetus is viable, abortion should be off the table. That's what an atheist doctor says. I mean, think about what we're saying here. And there's the hypocrisy and in regard to abortion, laws that really, I guess, cause a conundrum because there are cases, until recently in New York, where if you shoot a pregnant woman, the fetus and the mother dies, you can be booked for double homicide. So what is it? Is it a life just because someone says so, or is it a life because the law says it is? It really confuses a lot of people. And I think it goes back to the individual, I guess, being a little bit morally bankrupt because we're inundated with false information from all sides.
Yes, and I would describe what you just depicted very accurately as a diabolical disorientation. We are confused, and that's the first smell of sulfur when it comes to the evil one. How could you prosecute somebody for murder if they're killing a, quote, fetus, unquote, and on the other hand, okay it right up until birth as far as abortion goes? And what's chilling is that every liberal candidate, every Democratic candidate seems to be okay with that draconian birth control, unquote, method. So it's the slaughter of innocents in this country is just astonishing, and it's just amazing that one party has become the party of that. And also, let's remember with Planned Parenthood, besides being a quasi-religion, it's a business. And what's the government doing? Propping up a business. What about school vouchers for those who no longer can tolerate exposing their children to the type of things that they're exposed to in the public school system? Here I'm somebody who put 3 kids through Christian school, and besides paying for their education, I also had to pay and have to pay property taxes that go towards the public school system. So I'm hit twice with that. It's just it's discriminatory. It's blatantly unfair. And I'm hoping now, before there's a regime shift, whenever that is, that get voucher systems in place. But it's discrimination, and one of the reasons that Trump was elected is not just because of the abortion issue, but because of fears over religious discrimination and religious rights.
But it seems to be a lot worse than it used to be, coming from the far left. And this fascination with communism. Communism is really, I would say, a tool of the Luciferians to get their way, to get people to comply. And what people don't understand, especially young people that don't take the time to open up the book because, they've been indoctrinated, not educated, indoctrinated in the public school system with a political ideology that is no longer mainstream, you would say, of the Democratic Party. It is far left. It's Marxist. They don't know about the millions of people killed under Stalin and Mao Zedong and how those leaders of those regimes, those communist governments, were the richest people in the world. Now you have President Xi of China, who is clamping down. China, I thought at one point was going to be a more open society, like Russia, turn into Russia. Now they've become they've become a complete brutal dictatorship, which they don't think twice about vaporizing people. And they're headed down toward that path again. And I would say, now Trump says he's the chosen one when it comes to dealing with China. I say we should just break off all relations with China and not trade with them or any other country that is brutal towards women, toward homosexuals, right? Like they do in Saudi Arabia, that don't have basic human rights, or use slave labor, which is what's going on in China. And then the Hong Kong thing is really scary. So I don't know what's going to happen. You probably have more of an idea of what's going on based on your research and writing books like Lying Wonders and Strangest Things, which are available at spiritdaily.com, as well as all those different headlines. So why not give us a little bit of insight about what possible plans are going on in the background? And I guess what everything we're talking about right now are just symptoms of a disease.
And real serious symptoms. I mean, you look in not just the United States, but our neighbor to the north in Canada recently, they had transvestites, drag queens, who were reading stories to the kids in public school to acclimate them to this concept that there is no such thing as gender as a hard and fast rule. I mean, talk about indoctrination. And when one of the parents raised issue, they threw him out. They threw him out of the meeting. How dare he be opposed to this guy dressed up as a woman teaching the children? I don't know if China even goes that far. But anyway, as far as China, of course, in so many ways it goes so much further. And it's just intriguing to me how historically it seems like, the Red Dragon is an actuality behind the scenes there, isn't it? I mean, it seems like so many bad things, whether it's cultural or even if you want, even if it's something like swine flu, seem to come from that neck of the woods. And I'm not being totally facetious, but if people want to go down that route, if they want to have a social credit system and have a government check on health records and insurance and private messages and all these statistics about how we live and what we read, how people even date, they're checking in China, then you look to them as an example, and I certainly don't. And I agree with you that we should keep them at arm's length and be extremely concerned about the inroads they have made in the last few years.
What is the plan of the New World Order, and what are some of the factions that are in control here in the United States? Or, according to Lying Wonders Strangest Things, you have this whole America's Stonehenge, which I guess is giving us some insight about what the plan is. It seems like the dark forces, they kind of let you know what's coming down the pike. On Albert Pike, how about that? They kind of let you know what's coming down the pike, and then all of a sudden it happens and everybody's surprised. So talk about that.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, in 1979, in June, you had this guy, well-dressed fellow who went into this town that's about, less than 100 miles from Atlanta to the east, and called himself Robert C. Christian. And he had what, seemed like a crazy, eccentric request. He plopped down $10,000, and he said he wanted these granite monuments erected just outside of town in kind of, the paddle wheel like Stonehenge. And his name wasn't really Christian. Every time he flew into town, he came from a different location. I'm not making this up. This is all documented. And at any rate, he ended up paying for this aggregate for these kind of Stonehenge-like monuments that have an exquisite astronomical design with openings where you can tell when the solstice is coming or track the North Star. But besides being like Stonehenge and like the pyramids and so forth, there were messages written in, I believe it was 8 languages. I know English and Arabic, even Swahili, that were chiseled into the stone. I was there. I visited this place, even spelled out in Babylonian and Greek. And here's the message, and here's what it comes down to, I think, when it comes to New World Order. The message on these stones from this mysterious group that still to this day has never been identified was: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, guide reproduction wisely, unite humanity with a living new language, and rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things. Let's hear that again. Rule passion and faith and tradition with tempered reason, And it goes on from there. It says that we need kind of like an international court system. Let the nations still rule internally to a degree, but bring them before a world court. And so basically going on and on with a design for global authority. And like I said, we still don't know to this day who built those guidestones, they call them, the Georgia Guidestones, but they're in Elberton. Anyone is free to go visit them and take a look. I find it very curious, Zach, that when I went there, I found out that often witches and Satanists do rituals there. So that's another little sidelight.
What do you think the end result is going to be? How much time do we have? The clock is ticking.
Who knows? I don't know if right now we're going through a reprieve when it comes to religious rights, or we're going to see this incredible backwash of persecution, backlash, I should say, of persecution after the conservatives leave power. And there are cycles, It's really hard to say when, but it certainly seems like it's growing stronger and stronger and stronger. I mean, it seems like it's bursting at the seams. Even with the regime right now that seems more conservative, you still have all of these ultra-liberal trends. I mean, when you sit back and think about it, collective insanity is not going too far in describing societies, or a society here in the United States that now gives you several options for what your gender is. When I was looking on Facebook one day, and I noticed that it says male, female, or custom. So now you can customize your gender even on Facebook, which is a whole other problem, Facebook and Twitter and so forth.
Even more so than that, I rather identify with a younger age so I can get some better job opportunities. How about that?
That's
right.
Yeah.
I never understood.
Right.
I never understood why, if you want to be a police officer, they stop the age at 35. I'm thinking you want people that are over 35 to be the cops, because by the time you get to be 35 or 40, you mellowed out, you're more mature, you make better decisions because you use the wisdom that you acquired over the years, and you're less likely to put up with some crap, and you'll handle the situation on the side of the road a lot better. I know. I don't know. Maybe give out more wooden shampoos, but you won't go too crazy like some of the younger guys. I always found that fascinating. As far as war goes, instead of drafting the young, let us older guys fight it, because we'll go to ourselves, look, I'm not pussyfooting around. Let's just go there, do what we have to do, and come home. That's how we would deal with it, right? We'd be like, no, you're crazy. Let's get this thing done. We're young people, you just tell them, and they keep going and going like the Energizer Bunny, and they have no question they don't question the authority.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's, you can see the argument that they want cops to be physically fit, but I think that having more mature ones would, as you say, be fruitful in other ways. They don't always have to be the ones chasing a burglar through a wooded area.
Also, nowadays, if you're 40 or 50, you're a lot younger as somebody the same age 30 or 40 years ago. And you can still do things that are physical. I mean, look at our quarterbacks. Tom Brady is in his 40s, and he's still with the New England Patriots.
You're right. I mean, I live in a community in Florida that is just flooded with New York City retired policemen and firemen, and they all seem pretty fit, and they could still be working. And look at the drag on the pension system. So you're really being damaging on a number of fronts. They could be utilized, and they could be utilized well. There's no reason to push them into retirement.
We're talking with Michael Brown. He's got the book Lying Wonders Strangest Things. And this whole New World Order is kind of scary when you look at it. And it seems to be going at a rapid pace. Things are picking up. I don't know what that means to each and every one of us. I will say this, that if I was listening and I was paying attention to what's going on here on Lying Wonders Strangest Things, I'd make sure that I'm right with God, because time is running out and there's no guarantee that you get tomorrow. And beside what's going on here on Earth, we have the cosmos. It's very interesting that every so often, Michael, you hear these stories about asteroids heading our way. And I can remember reading a few years ago about one that's going to be in our direction by 2029, and it could be one of those killer asteroids. One just passed right by a couple weeks ago. I was paying attention to that in the news. What's going on that they're not telling us?
Well, I don't know what they are hiding. I do know at times they do. One time I was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory doing research on asteroids, and I was interviewing a scientist who actually was the basis for a Jodie Foster movie many years ago, but she had been the first to spot asteroids between Earth and the Sun. And she was telling me how there had been times when they spotted something and they debated quickly whether they should go and raise a public alarm that looks like it's about ready to whomp us, as she put it, and then decided not to because it would create a panic. So those types of scares do exist. I remember another scientist there telling me that the most likely scenario for a disaster with a comet or asteroid is that it's just suddenly one morning there, especially a comet coming from the blind side of the sun. And there's nothing that anyone would be able to do about it. And we might be out there watching this thing approaching for days, wondering if it's going to hit or just miss or what. No one would be able to tell us.
Do these comets have anything to do with the third secret of Fatima in any way, shape, or form?
I don't think so, but I do think that they have to do with some other prophecies in the realm of the Virgin Mary and so forth. I also think that something cosmological hit Wisconsin and western Michigan and the city of Chicago back in 1871, when you had the greatest wildfire in U.S. history occurring on the very same day as the greatest urban fire in American history, 220 miles south in Chicago, as well as massive fires in Michigan. Some people think there was a comet called Biela and that it had split apart and there were gases that Earth passed through. So this just tells us that we never know what might happen and what has happened in the past.
Well, if you go to spiritdaily.com, you're dealing with some wildfires that are in the Canary Islands, and there's something going on in Brazil. I understand that there are over 70,000 fires this past year as so far in the rainforest. What's causing all these fires?
Well, it's dry out there. And, I've said people get into this. I think it's a mistake to get in a conservative liberal tug of war over climate change. Climate change is one thing. I call it a climate gyration or whatever. But it's another thing to argue the cause. Now, that's really the debating point. Are humans causing it or is it natural? There is a swerve in climate, but I think it's caused largely by the sun. And it goes through cycles. We are in a period that is mimicking something that occurred back in the high Middle Ages and ended around the midpoint of the 1300s, the 14th century, when suddenly everything turned cooler. There was global cooling. So these can be natural cycles, and they can be very dramatic, and they can cause apocalyptic-like effects. So I look upon any changes in weather and extremes as being many times signs from God, not something that needs to be debated politically.
One thing you can say is life definitely isn't boring. It's got a lot of challenges, and you can pick up Lying Wonders Strangest Things by Michael H. Brown at spiritdaily.com. While you're at spiritdaily.com, you can see all the other books that Michael has put out over the years and check out the latest happenings. I think that spiritdaily.com is quickly becoming my favorite site. There's two bookmarks on my browser right now, Michael. It's The Drudge Report and spiritdaily.com. I just love the site, like what you're doing there, and I love your books.
Well, Zach, I love the way you conduct yourself on the air. It's you're very good, and it's a pleasure to be with you always.
Well, thank you. And next week we'll tell more tales from Lying Wonders Strangest Things.